to cover story. We have with us today Rajeev Chandrasekhar, an independent MP from Karnataka. He's an entrepreneur, but more interestingly, Rajeev is someone with a very active social conscience. First of all, Rajeev, I want to begin by congratulating you on this implementation of one rank, one pension. I believe you had some role in mediating with the government and also with the veterans.
Yeah, I think more than that, Priya, I have been involved in one rank, one pension as a concept and as an issue for about 9 years.
Tell us some more. How did you first get involved with it? A little bit about your background.
I obviously am a son of a veteran. My father was in the Air Force, and I have grown up all my life around veterans and people who served in the armed forces. But more importantly, when I first entered politics in Parliament in 2006, one of the first public events that I was part of was an event where the veterans were giving up their medals in Bangalore. And I remember that I was asked to speak, and it was my first opportunity to speak in public, and I was addressing a group of people whom I admired a lot. And it was a nervous occasion. I remember it for being nervous, and I remember it for being also very solemn and very sad about the fact that all these veterans were giving up their medals. So that struggle of 2006 has essentially taken 9 years for, for the few days ago when the government announced one rank, one pension.
But are you happy with the announcement? Because a lot of veterans are still saying it's a bit, but not enough.
Look, I think it's very difficult to be completely happy with a decision that has taken 42 years to happen. So, in a way, there is some merit in being less than completely happy. But like with most things in Delhi, I mean, I think you cannot get to where you want in one fell swoop. You don't get to that in one stage. So I have been urging the few veterans that are still, let's say, unhappy, that look, we have got to a very, very significant milestone where the government has accepted one rank, one pension and essentially moved all the old pensioners to a new level. Some of the more important issues going forward, we must engage with the government. This is probably the most pro-veteran, pro-armed forces government in the independent histories, independent India's history. And we must continue to engage with the government and then address those issues on an ongoing basis.
But what exactly were the sticking points? We know on record some that they wanted a revision of 5 years. Government wanted 5 years.
I think
veterans wanted 1 year.
There are two parts to one rank, one pension. One is to take the historical wrong and to bring it to current levels, which the government has done.
Okay.
Then there is an issue of how does this pension then keep getting corrected on a regular basis so that you don't go back to the what happened many years ago. And there the government has said we will correct it and normalize it once in 5 years. Now the veterans believe, as is correct, that for it to be one rank, one pension, it should be done every year. And the government has come back and said, look, it is probably difficult for us to do it once every year. Can we do it once in 5 years?
5 years.
It is, I believe both have some arguments. The government has an argument saying that, look, we want to see what the pension costs are and how it moves before we commit to doing it every year, because there are financial implications of this. The veterans are right in saying that, look, this means there will be one rank, 5 pensions.
So who in the government was, in your view, very forthcoming on this issue?
No, I think, look, the defense minister is a very knowledgeable, very details-oriented man, and he is from the get-go being very supportive of the veterans and the armed forces. That is Defense Minister Manohar Parrikar. For many reasons, I think between March of this year and this August of this year, it has played ping-pong within the bureaucracy. And it is not a secret that there are many people in the bureaucracy that are opposed to this. Because in a lot of ways, it takes the armed forces from where they have been placed in 1973 and tries to bring them up and more at par with the civil services. So there is, expectedly some people in the bureaucracy who opposed it. So I think the last 4 to 5 months, this played a bit of a ping pong in the bureaucracy. And I and many other people appealed to the Prime Minister in the late part of July and August that the Prime Minister should intervene himself. And I think this started moving forward and becoming what it became after the Prime Minister's office took some initiative and intervened.
So then you dealt with the UPA government. Can you tell us a bit about who you dealt with there?
No,
and what
I
happened?
will tell you, my experience with the UPA government versus the NDA government are like chalk and cheese. There was an almost completely apathetic attitude towards that, and I was called OROP Rajeev for many years, almost like being mocked. And there was never even a sense that they were sympathetic or were exploring it. Of course, everything changed in 2014 when elections were around the corner, and then the UPA suddenly decided that they can't...
it's a good vote bank.
Yeah, it's a good vote bank and you should not ignore it. As a matter of fact, in 2009 elections as well, there was a protest in Jantar Mantar, and I, along with Advani ji, had gone to the Jantar Mantar. And even then, the UPA government did not bite. It is only when 2014 elections loomed and they realized that there were serious problems that they woke up to the reality of the veterans as a vote bank. This is a cold, irresponsive, not our problem versus the NDA government that was actively from day one looking at a solution to the problem.
And why was this abolished in 73? Can you give us a bit of a background, and why did Indira Gandhi do that?
No, that I think only Indira Gandhi and the bureaucrats under her can explain.
Since
but
you've been studying the issue.
I think it was part of the post-71 war, Sam Manekshaw popularity and the armed forces popularity, that somebody must have made the suggestion to the then political establishment that the armed forces were getting too popular and they needed to be put down.
They were worried about another Pakistan.
Well, I think a bureaucrat has the ability in India to put ideas in the minds of politicians that don't necessarily exist, including coups and suggested coups and so on and so forth. So I think, but it was wrong. It was completely wrong, especially for our armed forces that had fought and won the biggest war for India and had given India the proudest moment in its history in 1971.
You are talking about the fact that they want to take a step back and see how it works out in terms of the finances before agreeing to a yearly revision. How is it going to impact our economy, the finances? Is Arun Jaitley right when he's putting a note of caution?
When the defence pension budget goes from 54,000 crores to 64,000 crores and then will grow every year, it is a natural cause of concern for the finance minister. I mean, I would be surprised if he was not concerned.
Correct.
But I think we have to move beyond that to see how we can reform the pension costs. One of the reasons why defence pension budgets are so high is because bulk of the armed forces retire at very young ages.
Yeah.
Because you want the Jawans to be young and the armed force to be young and fit. So instead of taking a 35-year-old capable fit person who may not be fit for the army and retiring him and sending him back to his village, there should be a way of taking him into the government in other areas of government where you don't need that level of fitness. Paramilitary, police, administration. And the moment you provide him employment up to 58, the pension costs come down. You don't lose a talented asset and a patriotic asset at the age of 38 and make him a pensioner. Instead, let him continue to be part of the government, earn salaries, contribute, and not be a pensioner and therefore a liability.
But see, what is also one problem recently, the railways have now said that they want one rank. So this domino effect, and the police will be asking, why can't we give it to everybody?
No, I'll tell you why. This is a red herring because the railways and every other government servant works till retirement age. The reason the armed forces are deserving of one rank, one pension is because you send a Jawan home starting from the age of 35. At the age of 35, the country tells him, we don't need you anymore, you are not young enough anymore to carry a weapon and fight a war, so please go home. We tell him to go home. So when you tell him to go home, you owe him a one rank, one pension.
Moving on from one rank, one pension, Rajeev, I can see you are clutching onto your telephone because you've been a telecom operator also. This missed calls is a big menace, even the Prime Minister himself is worried about it. Now the operators Call drops, sorry. Yeah. The operators are complaining is lack of infrastructure. The telecom ministry is putting the onus on the operators. What exactly is the problem and who is to blame?
No, look, there are many people to blame here, but that there is a problem is a legitimate. It is a legitimate problem, and it is a legitimate problem that is impacting the consumers, 800 million cellular phone consumers of India. And the reason for the problem is, for many years, consumers have never been the focus of public policy or the regulatory system. So whether it is a call drop whether it is consumers not getting coverage. The TRAI, which has got in the TRA Act a mandate to protect consumers, has done very little about it. The basic requirement for maintaining a certain standard of service to the consumer is the responsibility of the telecom company. There is no running away from it. Expectedly, the telecom company, when asked to do that, will say the sun is rising in the east, I don't have enough spectrum, I don't have towers. All of that is fine, but that is what their job is. Their job it is to find the towers. Their job it is to bid for spectrum. Their job it is to do whatever they have to do. You cannot dilute the fundamental obligation of providing a certain defined quality of service to the customer. And of course, it is all these corporates will try and wriggle out of it. But that is where the government of the TRA must step in and say, look, nobody is asking you with your limited spectrum to have 10 million customers. If your limited spectrum can only help you serve 2 million customers in a good way, that's what you should serve.
So can we monitor the...
Exactly, and that is what I have also said repeatedly in Parliament, that the norms for quality of service must be reviewed, and the TRA must now take a much more proactive way of putting in the license condition that if you are found to violate a certain grade of service, your license can be revoked or penalties will be imposed.
See, the other myth, or is it a myth or not, that cell towers cause radiation, which is why a lot of residents don't want cell towers coming up near their houses.
Look, a phone causes radiation, your wireless camera causes radiation, or wireless mic causes radiation, and a cell tower causes radiation. The issue is, does radiation represent a public health threat? Now, on that, there are contrary reports. There are many reports that say yes they do, and many reports that say that they are not. So what is best done by governments and regulators is to make sure that you err on the side of caution.
Correct.
By making sure cell sites are not close to hospitals, cell sites are not close to schools, cell sites are not close to, let us say, any other area where there are vulnerable people living, like I said, hospitals. But in the absence of any other confirmed medical evidence that it is impacting public health, cell sites have to be where crowds are, where consumers are.
So there's no. And another thing that is a great concern today is social media. That's really becoming a dominant mover of media and public opinion.
Right.
But there are also objections. You are very active in the social media,
right,
which is why I'm asking you this question. Yeah. So how do we govern the social media?
No, look, I think we have to be clear about one thing. Social media is a community, is a platform, is a world. So if you go say something, trolling is not a crime. Being criticized is not a crime.
But abusive.
Yes. Therefore, just as in normal law, if you abuse, if you defame, if you threaten, those are all punishable under the normal criminal penal code, and those are also punishable under the IT Act. So it is a question of, if you are being abused and trolled, if you have the temperament and the grit to go out and sue some people, you should. And I frankly, I'll tell you what happened in one of my campaigns. Somebody went and hacked my Wikipedia and wrote something during the 2014 election, something which is defamatory to me on my Wikipedia page.
Right.
I tracked down his IP address. I did put people on the job to find out who the user ID is, and we made sure that they were sent a legal notice, and we were filing a case against them. And then of course they apologized, and then we withdrew it. So if you are trolled or abused and there is a violation of law, you should be prepared to defend yourself. It's as simple as that. But to say that social media should somehow be moderated and people should not criticize and it all should be all hunky-dory and everybody should hug each other and agree with each other and should be agreeable is being naive, because the real world is a world where agreements and disagreements exist on a constant basis. You just have to look at a parliament to know how raucous agreements and disagreements can get.
But when someone like Kapil Sibal tried to control the social media or bring in some kind of rules, he got did he handle
you
it
must
wrong?
Understand.
Was the rule
there are
right and handled wrong?
No. It was a bad idea, handled even worse.
Okay.
Which is many things that Mr. Sibal did. That goes into one more of his thing. But the issue here is that moderating censorship and leaving it to one person or two people to decide what is right and wrong is a dangerous phenomenon, and it is not something that is sustainable in our democracy. The only thing that can work in our democracy is to frame a set of rules with public consensus and with public consultation, which usually is the law, and say if anybody in this community violates that law, you are prosecutable. But to have a joint secretary in the Department of Telecom start to decide what is right and what is wrong, what is defamatory, what is abusive, that is all asking for trouble, which is what Mr. Sibal wanted to do with Section 66A.
Okay, we need to take a short break, but we're going to come back because Rajeev is also an MP from Bangalore. So we are going to be asking him about Bangalore specific issues, the recent mayor election and also the meat ban and much more. So stay with us. Welcome back to Cover Story. We are in conversation with Rajeev Chandrasekhar, the Rajya Sabha MP from Karnataka. And having you here, I can't not talk about the economy. Do you also, a lot of your colleagues in the Rajya Sabha, Rahul Bajaj for instance, has expressed some disquiet. A lot of businessmen are not happy with the way the economy is supposed to be going. Modi came in with this promise, for what happened?
Look, Priya, let's one thing be very clear. This government came at the back of a very declining economy. It inherited, I sorry to use the word, but basket case of an economy.
But they knew that when they made all their
so let me
slogans.
finish. And they are trying to bring in a new transformational model vis-a-vis the relationship between government and business. For 10 years, business ran government. Business influenced government in unprecedented manner. That is why you had scams, whether in coal or telecom or wherever. This government is trying to re-architect, this is my view, I am not in government but I am giving you my outsider's view, is creating a view where governments have to work with all businesses. There are no favored businesses, there are no shortcuts to success, and business is taking time to get used to these new rules. Business in India is used to instant gratification. They are used to big bang budgets, they are used to big SOPs. They're used to big tax breaks. Instead, what is the Prime Minister Modi's government is saying is, look, we are going to create a framework where any business, small, big, very big, can all compete on fair terms, equal terms. Now, this will make a lot of businessmen in India very unhappy because they're not used to working like this. They're used to working shortcuts, they're used to working quick deals. So, to that extent, I think some amount of anxiety and disquiet is expected. On top of that, you have the government saying we are cleaning up the black money, we are cleaning up all this other stuff. And that is another area where business is not very comfortable because they are used to having to deal with the black economy, and they are some of them are very heavily embedded in the black economy. Real estate, all of them. So you are now faced with a situation where the government is changing the rules of the game, making it much more fair, much more open, much more transparent, and much more equal for everybody, which to some businessmen is not business as usual, and therefore they won't like.
But what is worrying us is not really the businessmen being unhappy, but the jobs on the street. People are still not getting that.
But look, I don't hold a brief for the government, but if I was the government, this is how I would respond to that question. Jobs are a lag indicator because you have to first create the investment environment, then the investments will come and the investments will create jobs. Jobs are the third leg of a three-part strategy. What is happening now is the government is reversing 10 years of bleak investment sentiment, reversing it. People are beginning to come back. People are beginning to make investments into companies and businesses and factories. Yeah, we are seeing it. And eventually jobs will be created. Now, if you expect jobs to be created overnight, there is no magic wand in anybody's hand. Obama took 10 years to create a situation in the US where net jobs were created after the 2008 crisis. So in a mature economy like the US, where investors don't have to worry about investment risk, they are taking time to invest. So in India it will take time, but I can speak as somebody who is a close observer of the economy and somebody who understands the economy a little bit more than others, that I think we are on the right track. Yes, there are some things I think we can do faster. I think some things we have, for inexplicable reasons, been slower than we should have.
Like?
I think, for example, on the overall regulatory reform in the entire infrastructure space, private-public partnership, we should create deep structural reforms that make investors sitting in the US or Germany or China or Russia much more comfortable about writing these billion-dollar checks in India and saying, we are happy that tomorrow the policy will not go flip-flop and we will lose our money.
See, you use the word magic wand. So then was Rahul Gandhi, poor fellow, on the right track when he says, I don't have a magic wand? Modi led us to believe he has a magic wand. Isn't there some problem in overselling?
Again, I don't want to get into a tutu-meme between Rahul Gandhi and the country, but I mean, I don't think Rahul Gandhi ever said he didn't have a magic wand. I think Rahul Gandhi's, the problem that people have with Rahul Gandhi is that he sat silently when the country went through its most brazen, corrupt loot ever. And being a mute spectator to a crime makes you as much of a criminal as, in my opinion, and I'm not alleging anything, as anything else. That's what people feel. I think that is his issue and he has to answer to that. What Prime Minister Modi did is the right thing, which is raise aspirations of people, to ask people to look beyond caste, creed, community and start talking about economic empowerment, economic prosperity. So he has raised the political narrative away from the conventional narrative of religion and caste and community and divisive narrative to one of empowerment and promise. Now, has he been able to deliver all of that in 2 years? It is physically impossible, even if you are God Almighty yourself, to do all of this transformation of a country that has operated 65 years in a particular form to a new model of equity, of fairness, of equal opportunity, entrepreneurship, investment, transparency, all in 2 years. It is not possible.
Rajeev, you've been talking about various issues, but now more specific to your part of the world, about Bangalore. You recently had a very interesting election, mayor election, where the BJP got a majority, but the Congress got a mayor. What do you make of all this?
No, it's one of those head-shaking moments because I think the Congress has still not understood or learned what the message of 2014 was, that people want a certain different type of politics and certain different type of governance. The mandate in the Bangalore municipal elections, which is involves about 6 million, 7 million eligible voters and 4 million people voted, was a clear, decisive mandate in favor of the BJP. And in a funny twist, because the law provides for MPs and MLAs to vote in the mayor's election, the Congress tied up with another regional party and voted and took control of the BBMP. Now, you can argue that it is all fair in politics, but I think in what is emerging in today's world as a much more open, knowledgeable electorate, this kind of gamesmanship by the Congress, I think, wasn't necessary and isn't very well appreciated, in my opinion.
On that note, I'm afraid we've run out of time, but thank you for talking to us, and thank you for watching this edition of Cover Story. We'll see you again, same time next week.